Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at great thrash metal albums since 1983. And we're going to start right now. And before I continue, I'm going to leave links in the description to check out songs by Creator. Other than that, let's just get on with it. So who doesn't love thrash? When you need to unleash aggression and the traditional stuff isn't enough, you need something with more power, energy and pace, right? Well, that's how it began at least. Borrowing the gallop from the new wave of British heavy metal, throwing away some of the melody and throwing in some punk attitude and rhythm work. There were primitive rumblings of this new style formation around the world, radically different styles between the Bay Area and the East Coast of the US, Brazil and Germany primarily. The Bay Area undeniably stood out as the most potent as Metallica, Exodus, Testament dominated the circuit with this ferocious new brand of metal with Slayer and Megadeth not far from reach elsewhere in California. Along on the East Coast, Anthrax and Overkill sounded different, especially as Anthrax leaned on the crossover hardcore and punk more than thrash bands, while Overkill stuck to their own vision, reveling very little throughout their career, putting attitude front and center of their musical approach. Going abroad, a number of acts were marking up thrash's sound, shoveling dirt on it as they walked the line between thrash and pro-death metal. The Teutonic Four that were known as Creator, Sodom, Destruction and Tankard ramped up the intensity, playing far faster than any of the state acts in the earliest days. Elsewhere, Sepultura put Brazil on the metal map, also balancing the extreme metal tightrope. And as the 90s arrived, groups saturated heavy metal entirely as Pantera carried the torch, keeping the spirit of metal lit throughout the decade. Thrashers were quick to adapt, but most of them failed to contribute much of note, half-heartedly trying to keep pace as the style nearly went extinct. Fortunately, the new millennium brought a massive resurgence as old school fans were either sick of groove and pining for the old days of a new generation of headbangers clung to the classics inspired by thrash's originators and heaped not so subtle praise onto their heroes. The new thrash movement yielded an entirely new crop of thrash acts that have continued to keep this beloved genre alive as the Godfathers rolled back with new age classics of their own, ensuring that there was plenty to go around after that mostly bereft dark period. History lesson over, it's time to look at the great thrash albums since 1983, the year the genre was firmly established. Just like that, Metallica spawned thrash. The Bay Area upstarts took the galloping might of the roaring new wave of British heavy metal scene, and a little hiccup to their rhythm, and the new genre emerged from here. Hetfield's gruff vocals and rigid cadence further defined this fresh style as Metallica entered the fray with time-honored cuts like Phantom Lord, Hit the Lights, Four Horsemen, Seek and Destroy, and more. Distancing themselves from their influences, Metallica continued to develop this new rhythmic approach to heavy metal with a scorched earth riffing policy employed on the opener, Fight Fire with Fire. Their songcraft blossomed on Ride the Lightning, as well as best evidenced by their instrumental closer, Call of Cthulhu. With Metallica's influence permeating this still young scene, Bay Area bands quickly latched on and started offering classics of their own. In the infancy of thrash, the Bay Area was a cutthroat scene where musicians were raising the stakes and were challenging others to best them. Exodus commanded the most attention from their peers, thanks to Gary Holt's fearless riffing, attack and advanced interplay between his fretting and picking hands. His throat-punching tone and maniac shrieks of the now late Paul Bailoff, the riff mania of Bonded by Blood, set the edge with venomous offerings like Piranha, the main-splitting title track, and the fan-favourite Strike of the Beast. This was one of the best years for metal, with Slayer issuing Raining Blood and Megadeth delivering Peace Sells. However, it was Metallica's major label debut that trumps them all, as Master of Puppets simply cannot be topped. With a stronger sense of dynamics and pace, the Bay Area boys put their best chops on display on the title track as guitar hooks fed off Hetfield's growing vocals, injecting a bit of swing to their typical freight train rhythms. The Legacy is a bold title for your debut album, but Testament were there to make a statement, and what a statement they made. Initially hailed as the possible heir to Metallica's thrash throne, Testament offered something new as the young Alex Skolnick displayed technique far beyond his years. Flashy melodies clashed with chunky riffing, while Chuck Billy offered some more diversity among thrash vocalists, able to contrast his gritty delivery with crisp cleans. Now, where do you go after blueprinting death metal with the red-lined aggression of Raining Blood? There was no sense for Slayer to attempt to best this instant masterpiece, so they headed in the opposite direction. Slow things down for the most part on South of Heaven, despite this adventurous new style. The sound was still unequivocally Slayer, with their riffing style intact as Jeff Hanneman laid down Chilling Lee's immortalized in the title track and the other song Mandatory Suicide. The danger was still palpable as they didn't let off the gas completely, still finding time to see red on Silent Scream and Ghosts of War. Pockets were emerging around the world. Bay Area, East Coast of USA and Germany. Brazil was cooking up a different kind of beast altogether. Sepultura were instrumental in establishing the early death metal sound on Schizophrenia. Where do you think Cannibal Corpse took their influence from? And blur the lines between Thrash and Death on their defining Beneath the Remains record. Taking on social political themes to portray their strife, and the four pieces sliding, galloping rhythms and Mass Cavalera's rough grunt were duality influential as cuts like Massive Notice and Inner Self, Primitive Future declared there was a new Thrash heavyweight to be contended with. As Thrash spread its wings, taking on new forms, Dave Mustaine rewrote rules on the tech-shred classic Rust in Peace. His slithering song structures kept any listener on the high end alert, blazing through riff after riff, injecting it with volume melodies and igniting all-time solo duels with Marty Friedman. When grunge came along to overshadow heavy metal shortly after, Pantera's power group ended up dominating over the Thrash albums that would be released in the ensuing years. Regardless, the surgical guitar playing had a halo effect on the metal underground, ushering a new wave of guitar greats.